A living room doesn't need a gold chandelier or a marble fireplace in order to feel high-end. No, real luxury shows up in the details, in the scale of a coffee table, the curve of a chair, or just the way the light hits the space. And so these 4 rooms that I'm about to show you aren't just styled, they're sculpted, layered, and built around a particular atmosphere. There's no filler furniture, no trendy clutter, just quiet, confident design that feels really considered from floor to ceiling. So let me break down exactly what makes each of these 4 living rooms feel so elevated, even without saying a word. Okay, so in this first living room, there's a lot to unpack. The first thing that really stands out at me is the curated asymmetry. We've got this biomorphic coffee table, the off-center banquette, and this really interesting lamp that all feel really intentional, not random at all. So everything is a little bit off kilter, but it's still perfectly balanced. Now, another interesting thing is that a lot of this stuff in here seems to be custom built. You know, that curved platform, that's definitely not store-bought. It's sculpted from travertine to fit the room essentially like a stage set. And these screen panels, these are not your average folding screen. They're rotating brass and marble slabs that double as pieces of art. There's also a lot of contrast in the materials being used here. We've got velvet seating, brushed brass, raw travertine, and a lot of rich wood, and so the texture layering here really screams bespoke and not budget at all. And throughout the entire space, we've got this museum-like composition, because every object here, from the coral textured vase, this tribal sculpture, the organic lamp, they all feel collected, not like they were shopped for in a single go. And so that kind of styling takes years or a very good art dealer, and in my experience, I'm guessing that they might have used some of both on this one. Now, obviously getting this particular look in a newer apartment will be difficult because they've preserved all of the architectural bones of this space. You've got these Haussmannian moldings and the chevron floors that elevate everything else in the room. So you could furnish this space with cardboard and it would still look really good, which may not be the case for wherever you're living right now. Now, one thing I really love about this space is that all the colors used flatter the rest of the materials in the room. So we've got moss green, chocolate, terracotta, navy, and they're all muted but still distinct. And so those colors let the metals and textures pop without ever being too loud. Plus, there are a lot of really interesting shapes going on here, and nothing is flat or just standard. From the stacked travertine tiers to the twisted metal forms in the hallway, this space is full of unique shapes that catch light and shadow in pretty interesting ways. And at the same time, it's got this built-in rhythm and repetition, because you've got curves repeating across the sofa, the coffee table, the rug, and even the architecture itself, which creates a sense of harmony without having matching sets. And this room really uses a sense of unusual scale in a pretty effective way. For example, the lounge chair is oversized, and the screen panels are much taller than the door, but because the ceiling is super high and the proportions are still balanced, it just looks elevated as opposed to overwhelming. Okay, moving on to living room number 2, and in this one, everything feels really custom and handmade, not store-bought at all. Just look at the coffee tables. They're blocky stone with sharp cuts that make them feel more like art than furniture. The accent chairs have these thick U-shaped backs and custom feeling cushions on them, and even the stools are crafted, wood frames with rust-colored boucle, so nothing in here looks mass-produced. The color palette in here is neutral, but the textures themselves actually do the heavy lifting. It's all creams, blacks, rusts, and warm woods, but the space never looks flat, because you've got boucle, veined stone, matte fabric, soft rugs, and sheers all layered together. There's no glossy faux leather or printed throw pillows in sight here, it's just rich, quiet textures. Now, one thing I really love about this living room in particular is that it chooses furniture over decor. There's no need for wall art or any loud accessories because the furniture itself is the art, which makes every curve and cut look really deliberate. And the symmetry in the space, which I don't always love, in this case it makes things feel intentional without making it feel stiff. You've got these twin coffee tables, the matching floor lamps, and the perfectly balanced seating, and so everything is evenly spaced here, but it's still not sterile. And then the woodwork ties everything together. You've got the chairs, the side pieces, the tables, and they're all in warm, visible grain wood with no veneers or espresso finish. This is real touchable craftsmanship. And another thing you'll notice in here is that nothing is shiny. You've got matte fabrics, matte floors, matte stone, and that quiet, subtle finish silently screams of money as opposed to the shiny items that you see in a typical mall showroom. And the bonus on this one is that there's no hero piece. And that's the real flex. Nothing here is begging for attention because everything just looks expensive on its own. So you're not staring at a single statement couch. Instead, you're soaking in a room where every piece pulls its own weight. Alright, living room number 3 here, and I think of this one as the rich guy's jungle cabin. This is a place to aspire to. First, you've got zero trim, zero fluff, and zero shortcuts. You've got floor-to-ceiling glass, these full wood-wrapped walls and ceilings, and natural stone underfoot. So this is definitely not DIY or nice for the budget. This is a custom build from the ground up. Now, one thing that really speaks to me in this space is that it's all wood and no paint. Everything here is either natural oak, teak, or walnut, and even the wall vents are made out of sculpted wood. So that's not just decor, that is architecture. Plus, you've got furniture that was clearly made deliberately for this space, and there's not a single filler piece here. Every chair, every bench, and even every light looks like it was commissioned for this space and not just bought off of a shelf. And they all match in tone without being too matchy-matchy. Now, you've got these 2 couches here, but unlike many luxury living rooms, they're not showy. Instead, they're soft, they're deep, and they're neutral. So you could totally crash here with friends and still feel legitimately comfortable because there's no velvet, there's no tufted buttons, and there's just no drama. Plus, everything in this room is low. The table, the chairs, the sight lines, it's all horizontal and designed to keep your eyes at peace. And so even with these ceilings, which look to be something like 14 feet or maybe 4.5 meters, nothing tries to flex vertically. And even the messy parts of this room are still designed. You've got this woven tray with a stack of books, the folded throw on the bench, and a slight rumple on the armchair. Nothing here is too precious, but it just looks expensive because it actually is. And now for living room number 4, which comes from this beautiful home in Sao Paulo, Brazil. First, I want you to look at these architectural statement pieces. These monolithic concrete columns and the board-formed concrete ceiling, these were not added in a renovation. They're original structural elements that were celebrated in the reno, not hidden. And that choice alone takes both budget and boldness. Now, you can see that the entire room here is wrapped in natural walnut paneling. So this is not just a single accent wall, but it's floor to ceiling and door to door. But inside that warm wrap of walnut, we've got this beautiful mid-century Brazilian furniture. And these aren't pieces inspired by these guys, they're the real deal. For example, take that Pitala coffee table, which was designed by Jorge Zalzapin in the 1960s. Now it goes for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Its origami-like folds, the rich finish, and the low profile make it an instant focal point of any room. Plus, the room has a ton of textural tension. We've got this suede-like olive upholstery, this thick saddle leather, the raw concrete, the polished wood, and even some soft sheer. So every surface is a sensory experience of its own, and it's perfectly layered together in this room. Because it's not just the furniture that's designer in this space, because that cascading glass chandelier is a vintage Dominici, which is a highly respected Brazilian lighting brand known for its sculptural pieces with insane clarity and quality. But beyond these statement pieces, think of how little visual clutter there is in here. There are so few accessories, and yet the room doesn't feel empty at all. Every object has space to breathe, and every form has contrast. So it's certainly minimal, but it's not sparse at all. And so overall, this room maintains its historical context, but also adds on a layer of modern clarity. So the space honors its 1970s Sao Paulo roots, but it's been refined with 2020's level restraint. Now, I want to point out something important about the 4 living rooms we just looked at. They don't look expensive because they're filled with designer labels. No, they look expensive because everything inside them feels deliberate. From the wood grain on the walls to the curves of the lamps. There's no random decor, no filler furniture, and no guesswork anywhere. There's just strong bones, thoughtful materials, and quiet confidence. And the biggest flex is that none of these spaces are trying too hard. Because when every piece belongs and nothing is screaming for attention, that's when a room feels truly luxurious. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I love looking at living rooms like this, especially those that are so beautiful and so well put together. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll drop me a like, and I think you'll also enjoy this video up here, where I do the same for a few beautiful bedrooms. I'll see you there.